Welcome to Happy, Healthy, Whole, and Rich, where faith meets action and transformation is non-negotiable. I'm Tina Brinkley Potts, and I believe now is the time to step boldly into your power, walk in divine wisdom, and claim the life you were meant to live. Each episode, I'll bring you real, unfiltered truth, because this world needs leaders who refuse to shrink. Let's get it. Welcome back to Happy, Healthy, Whole, and Rich. I'm Tina Brinkley Potts, and I want to remind you, I know who I play for, and so do you. Yesterday, we sat with Keith and the Law of Vibration, the 2-hour phone call, the Done Me Wrong song, the moment he asked me to help him rescue the very person who had taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from him. We talked about frequency, about how the pattern of shrinking himself for people who don't deserve it wasn't random. It was a signal he'd been broadcasting for a long time. Today we're staying with Keith, but I want to widen the lens. Because here's something I've noticed doing this work for as long as I've had. This pattern almost never stays contained to one room of a person's life. If it shows up in business, I promise you, if you look closely enough, you will find it showing up somewhere else too. Sometimes in health, sometimes in friendships, and often, very often, in marriage. Keith is a controlling husband, and I want to be honest with you. So is Marcus, the client we spent our first 2 days with. 2 different men, 2 completely different stories, 2 industries that don't overlap at all. And yet here's the same thread running through both of their marriages. Both of their wives are, by every account, very beautiful women. And somewhere beneath all of that control, both men carry the same quiet, unspoken belief. They don't actually believe they deserve her. Today's law is the law of correspondence. And I think it's going to help you understand something about your own life that you may have never connected before. Let's stay with Keith. You already know the business side, the deals taken from him, the loyalty misplaced on people who've shown him exactly who they are, the willingness to shrink himself to keep the peace with people who never earned that peace. What you don't know yet is what shows up at home. Keith is controlling with his wife, not in the sense of being a tyrant, and not in some dramatic, obvious way that would make it easy to point at and name. It shows up in smaller currents, needing to know where she is, needing a say in who she spends time with, needing to keep a tighter grip on her world than a relationship built on trust would ever require. And here's what I want you to notice, because this is the piece that took me a minute to see clearly myself. On the surface, the business pattern and the marriage pattern looks like opposites. In business, Keith gives away too much. He lets people take. He rescues people who've wronged him. He loosens his grip on whatever is rightfully his. In marriage, he does the reverse. He holds on too tight. He tries to control what he's afraid of losing. I'm blessed that I get to see both sides of this because they trust me. Marcus and Keith both trust me enough to have the hard conversations, the ones most people won't have with their manager or with their coach or their strategist, whatever you want to call me today. And that trust is actually how I know about the controlling tendencies with their wives in the first place. Both wives have spoken to me directly at their husbands' requests for different reasons at different times. And in those conversations, something would come up, a moment, a comment, a pattern they've been sitting with, and I'd recognize it instantly because I already heard its twin sitting across from me in a business conversation weeks earlier. This is oneness again, showing back up. I told you a few days ago, there are many rooms, but it's all the same house. I didn't have to go looking for the correspondence between how these men handle business and how they handle their marriages. It found me, simply because I was already standing in more than one room of the same house. Two different behaviors, passive in one room, controlling in the other. And if you only look at the surface, you'd think you were looking at two unrelated men, one too generous, one too controlling. But I want you to look underneath both behaviors because that's where correspondence lives. And underneath both of them is the exact same sentence, just wearing two different outfits. I don't actually believe I get to just keep this good thing without earning it, protecting it, or fighting for it every single day. In business, that belief shows up as I have to earn my seat at the table by giving, by shrinking, by making it easy for people to take from me. Because deep down, I'm not sure I belong there on my own merit. In marriage, the same belief shows up as I have to control this relationship. Because deep down, I don't fully believe a woman like her chooses to stay with a man like me without me managing every variable that might take her away. Different room, same fountain. And here's the part that matters most, because I don't ever want you to hear me explain a pattern and think I'm excusing it. Control is not love. It doesn't matter how much fear is sitting underneath it. Control still costs something real. It costs a wife her freedom to simply exist without being monitored. It costs trust. It costs the very relationship the fear was trying to protect in the first place. Because nothing suffocates intimacy faster than being managed instead of being chosen. Understanding where the fear comes from does not excuse what the fear produces. If this is showing up in a real way, that's actually harming someone. That's not just a journaling exercise. That's something that needs real accountability, maybe real counseling, and not just spiritual insight. But I do think it's worth understanding the root, because you cannot uproot what you refuse to trace back to its source. Keith isn't gripping his wife because he's a controlling person by nature. He's gripping her because somewhere in him is the same architecture that lets a business associate walk off with a deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A deep, quiet conviction that he is not fully worthy of holding good things without a fight. In business, that conviction makes him too loose with his grip. In marriage, it makes him too tight. Same root, two rooms, two completely different looking symptoms of the exact same disease. Now, turn with me to James 3:11-12. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. This is one of the clearest pictures of correspondence in all of Scripture. James isn't talking about business or marriage specifically. He's talking about the tongue, about blessing and cursing coming out of the same mouth. But the principle he's naming is exactly what we're looking at today. A fountain has one source. Whatever comes out of it, wherever it comes out, it's going to carry the nature of that source. A fig tree cannot produce olives just because you've moved it to a different part of the orchard. The room changes, the fruit does not. I also want to bring in Luke 6:45. A good man, out of the good treasure of his heart, bringeth forth that which is good. And an evil man, out of the evil treasure of his heart, bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance the heart his mouth speaketh. Notice, it doesn't say a man behaves one way in business and another way at home based on the situation. It says out of the treasure of his heart, singular, one treasure, a man brings forth what is actually in there. Keith's heart isn't divided into a business compartment and a marriage compartment. It's one heart, one treasure, and both rooms of his life are drawing from the exact same well. The law of correspondence is often summarized in one line. As above, so below. As within, so without. But I want to give you something more specific than that phrase, because I think it gets repeated so often it loses its teeth. Correspondence doesn't just say your inner world and outer world are connected. That's closer to oneness, which we already covered. Correspondence says something more precise. The pattern itself repeats. Not just the rooms are linked, but that if you examine the actual shape of what's happening in one room, you will find that same shape, that same architecture showing up in a completely different room, even when the behavior looks nothing alike on the surface. I want to bring in a few voices here because different teachers have looked at the same law from different angles. And I think hearing it three ways will help it actually land instead of being a phrase you nod along to. Neville Goddard built almost his entire teaching around this, even though he rarely used the word correspondence itself. His language was assumption. He taught that the feeling you've quietly accepted as true about yourself becomes the blueprint, and your outer circumstances have no choice but to arrange themselves to match that blueprint. Not eventually, not sometimes, but as a matter of law. When I look at Keith through Neville's lens, I don't see a business problem or a marriage problem. I see one accepted assumption. I am not fully worthy of holding good things, showing up as the exact blueprint for two different rooms. Ernest Holmes, who built the science of mind teaching, framed it a little differently. He talked about the subjective becoming objective, about thought impressed on what he called universal mind, and law faithfully returning it as a corresponding form. Holmes would tell you that law doesn't judge, it doesn't filter, and it doesn't decide which rooms of your life deserve the pattern and which don't. It simply returns what was impressed upon it everywhere without exception until the impression itself changes. And Florence Scovel Shinn, who taught in much more everyday practical language, used to say that your words and your beliefs were like seeds. Whatever you keep repeating out loud or in the quiet of your own thinking eventually showed up as your circumstances. She didn't call it correspondence. She called it the word made manifest. But it's the same law, just spoken in plainer accent. Three different teachers, three different vocabularies, assumption, impression, the spoken word, but all three are pointing at the exact same mechanism we're talking about today. The inner pattern doesn't stay contained. It insists on repeating itself in form, in every room it's given access to. That's exactly what we're looking at with Keith. If you only measured behavior, you'd miss it completely. Too generous in business and too controlling in marriage look like they belong in two different personality types. But correspondence isn't asking you to measure behavior. It's asking you to measure the belief underneath the behavior. And once you do that, the two rooms stop looking like opposites and start looking like mirror images of each other, reflected through two different circumstances. This is great news, even though it might not feel like it yet, because it means Keith doesn't have two separate problems to solve. A business boundary problem and a marriage control problem. He has one belief to repair, that he is worthy of holding good things without earning them through self-erasure or defending them through control. Heal that one belief and watch both rooms shift, because they were never actually two rooms to begin with. They were two expressions of one fountain. I want you to take this out of Keith's story now and hold it up against your own life for a second. Is there a pattern showing up in your finances that also shows up in a different costume, maybe in your health? Is there something in how you let people treat you at work that also shows up in how you let or don't let people close to you? Correspondence says, stop treating these as separate case studies. Start asking what one belief is fluent enough to speak two completely different languages in two completely different rooms of your life. That's the belief that's actually running things. That's the one worth repairing. I want you to sit with a pen in your hand for this part. Don't just listen, right? Number 1, where in my life do I behave one way, too giving, too passive, too accommodating, and somewhere else behave the opposite way, too controlling, too rigid, too guarded? What if both are the same fountain? Number 2, James asked whether a fountain can yield both sweet and bitter water from the same place. If I'm honest, what is the one water, the one belief flowing out of me into every room of my life right now? Number 3, where have I mistaken control for love or mistaken self-erasure for generosity without asking what fear was actually underneath it? Number 4, Luke 6:45 says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. If I listen to how I actually talk to myself in business, in my marriage or relationships, in how I treat my own body, what would that abundance reveal about the real treasure in my heart right now? Number 5, if I only had to repair one belief instead of fixing 10 different behaviors, what would that one belief be? Right until something uncomfortable shows up. That discomfort is usually where the real work is. Here's what I want to leave you with. You do not have as many separate problems as you think you do. You have one fountain, and it is producing the exact same water in every room of your life, even when the rooms look nothing alike. The version of you that undercharges a client and the version of you that overexplains yourself to someone who disrespects you, and the version of you that grips too tightly out of fear of losing what you love, those are not 3 different people. That's one fountain running through 3 different rooms of the same house. So stop trying to patch each room separately. Go to the source. Repair the one belief and watch how many rooms in your life get quiet and clean and whole all at the same time, because they were only ever drinking from the same water to begin with. But I need to say this plainly. Because I told you on day one, there would be no spiritual bypassing in this series, and I meant it. You cannot chant your way past a belief you refuse to face. You can stand in the mirror every morning and declare wholeness over your life, and it will not outspeak a chronic thought you keep thinking and a chronic pattern you keep acting from underneath it. Affirmations were never meant to override the wound. They were meant to follow the healing, not substitute for it. And I'm not telling you that you have to go dig up your whole childhood to get there. That's not what I'm asking you today. What I'm asking is much simpler and honestly, much harder. What are your chronic thoughts? Not the thought you had once on a bad day. The thought that shows up again and again. The one running quietly underneath your business decisions and your relationships and the way you talk to yourself when no one's listening. That thought is the source. That thought is the fountain. If you're willing to actually face that, not analyze it to death, not build a whole therapy session around it right this second, just face it. Name it. Stop pretending it isn't there. Life can start to change today. Not next month. Not after the next breakthrough seminar. Today. It really is that simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay whole, and stay rich in understanding that this is all you. So it's time to do right by you. If this episode is stirring something in you, do me a favor. Share it with someone. Let's help someone rewrite the pact they've unconsciously made with lack. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same truth, same walk toward more. This is Happy, Healthy, Whole, and Rich, and we're just getting started. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, live it, and let's grow together. Head over to happyhealthywholerich.com for more powerful teachings and join